Hello, I'm Rosie Batty. Tonight's programme continues the story of Anna Davies' investigation into the mysterious death of her niece. Mother of two, 24-year-old Amy Wensley was living on a bush block south of Perth when she died from a gunshot wound in 2014. Police quickly concluded it was a suicide, but Amy's family had their doubts. It was only when her aunt began researching the case that the wheels of justice started to turn, leading to a long-awaited coroner's inquest.
Ambulance? Tell me exactly what happened.
My wife shot herself. She's dead.
What was your name, sir?
David Simmons. Why did she do that?
The police said Amy killed herself. It just did not make sense to me. It didn't add up.
How did you get that?
To think that Amy would take herself away from her babies is just unbelievable. So my auntie proceeded to do her own investigation.
She met David when she was working at the pub. He was nice. And yeah, she seemed happy.
The picture I got was that after Amy fell pregnant, things began to change.
I just remember seeing him with his hands around her neck, bent over the kitchen table. She was fighting back.
Both Amy and Dave had spoken about breaking up. Oh my God, Dave is always drunk. Then on Friday, he got on the drugs and I just exploded.
Amy's last day of life, Amy spent the morning with a friend. David was with Gareth Price.
The boys had been out hunting, drinking.
A fight has happened. At about 5 p.m, she spoke to her mother and told her she had thrown a beer bottle at him and punched him in the lip. She said that David had grabbed her by the throat and slammed her to the floor.
Told her, take a shoot, get the girls, come and stay with me.
She's packed the birthday presents, her passport, but within 18 minutes, something has gone terribly wrong.
You know, why would Amy tell my mum she's on her way and then go back inside and shoot herself in the head?
Due to them being present on the property, David Simmons and Gareth Price were both arrested. David on suspicion of murder and Gareth on suspicion of being an accessory after the fact. But they were released without charge and the police declared Amy's death a suicide. In the first year of working alone on Amy's case and talking to her friends, I came to discover just how toxic Amy's relationship was with David. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of breaking up, there was a lot of getting back together. There was talk of marriage. But I thought there was strong evidence in the week leading up to Amy's death that she was leaving for good. I was chasing the coroner's office, trying to find out what was going on, and I spoke to the CEO of the Women's Council Against Domestic Violence in WA, and she said to me, you need to speak to a family advocate. Thank you for bringing me on today. His name is Charandev Singh. It was a year ago today that she passed away, and you know, on the night they went to my sister and said that she took her own life. And we found that really, really hard to believe.
I've been working 29 years with over 135 families. Almost all of that's been unpaid. Bring some value to this. I try and stay with the people who are fighting incredibly painful and difficult battles for as long as I possibly can.
And she was leaving. She told my sister on the phone, I'm coming. And she never made it. So what I did was I outlined my concerns in a letter to the coroner.
If I could have a look at the documents. The family needed a WA-based legal team to pursue a coronial inquest hearing into Amy's death. Oh, good day. I just wanted to be put through to the pro bono coordinator, please.
What got me interested in this case is that it's one of a number that I've done with Charandev that relate to police failings in domestic violence.
There's been no coronial brief.
The fundamental failing of the investigation here was that there was a cursory and almost immediate leap to a suicide conclusion.
There's no evidence that they obtained that indicates that Amy was anything close to suicide.
Yeah. Things began to progress when Charandev and the legal team became involved. And early 2017, the coroner was given a police report and we were given a copy of that report.
The men who were at the house at the time that the gunshot was fired, they were just treated as witnesses.
Why, on the night when the police arrived, why they didn't immediately separate the two. This report raised more questions than answers. I couldn't believe some of the things that were in there that the police never shared with us. Someone had actually filled out a form and decided to tick Amy as being Aboriginal, which concerned me because Amy's not Indigenous. Why? Amy gets her colouring from out my side of the family. I guess Amy's dark features would come from my mother's side of the family being Thai.
The fact that Amy looked Aboriginal, she had Aboriginal children, Amy's partner, David Simmons, was Aboriginal, was one of the scenarios I thought might have infected the criminal investigation response.
I think that the police response would have been vastly different if this had happened in one of the affluent western suburbs of Perth.
But what gave me hope was reading that the uniformed police officers, who were the first to arrive on the scene, were very, very concerned.
I was in company with Pip Dixon and Ian Roberts. I got out of the car and a person I now know to be Robert Simmons, the owner of the property, he just told me that there's been a shooting. Gareth Price, David Simmons' friend, said, my mate's partner, she shot herself. Pip Dixon and I went to the house and straight into the main bedroom. This is a drawing of the bedroom where Amy was found. This is the doorway here, and it's got a wardrobe all the way down here, built-in wardrobe. Amy was found right opposite the door. Door opens inwards, and there was no handle on the inside. The gun's about 1.5 meters away from Amy at this time. The cartridges on the bedside table, a live round and a spent cartridge, and she was sitting on her right hand. She was hit square on in the temple. Square on in the temple, I mean, you know, that's not up and down. I summed it up first up by saying to Pip, this is suspicious. That gun's over there, it's nowhere near the body. There was no note, the position of the body sitting on the hand. You can't just pick a double-barrel shotgun up with one hand and peg yourself. I said to her in that room that night, I'm sorry for what's happened to you, sis. We'll get to the bottom of it. Once Ian Roberts had finished taking the photographs, we said, look, we've got to call this in as suspicious. The crime car was called. It was 2 detectives, Tom Wiedemann, Senior Constable, and Sergeant Kirkman. They did go inside and they came out with the conclusion that she committed suicide. Ian and I sort of straight away questioned that. You haven't asked us any questions about what we thought. You haven't quizzed us. And there's 2 statements being taken of Price and Simmons, and you haven't read those statements. So an argument occurred. We did push back, but it's a situation where he is the detective sergeant and he deems it as non-suspicious. So we have to go with that. The detectives all drove off and we had a call not 5 minutes later that the statements were read and it's still deemed suicide. I can't read the crystal ball and say, Amy did shoot herself, Amy didn't shoot herself. But what I can say is it's frustrating to think on the night the investigation of homicide hasn't been carried out.
The quality of the police work that happened on the day that Amy died, I'd like to say I hope it never happens to any other family. Detectives on the night didn't even speak to one member of my family, not one. They didn't answer questions about their relationship and physical altercations and violence. A forensic team was not called in, so the place was not protected.
The firearm wasn't treated for forensics. You normally put that in a paper bag. The trajectory of the firearm, blood spatter, all this evidence is now gone. The nuggets have gone. And that's really devastated this investigation. It should have remained a forensically protected area.
The trauma cleaning service turned up first thing the next morning and completely wiped the scene of anything useful forensically. The bloodstains were removed, the carpet was removed. There was nothing left.
I sort of thought, well, this is a real schmozzle, what's happening here. You hear about it in the police often, but you don't ever get involved in it because you think it's never going to happen, but it does happen.
As we read through the police statements by David, his friend Gareth, and David's father, Robert, we began to get a sense of the sequence of events that took place that night as they described it.
David and Gareth told the police that they were outside near the car when they heard a noise from inside. David ran to the bedroom door. There was some resistance, but he pushed it open enough to look around the door and he saw Amy there with the gun on her lap. Gareth was following David. He saw the shotgun, he says, on Amy's lap. He says he picked it up between thumb and forefinger, flicked it away from her body, and then he covered her. They were both consistent that the stock of the gun was down near Amy's feet and the barrel was up toward her head. Robert Simmons, David's father, got a phone call from St John Ambulance to say, we've had a report of an incident. Are you able to go down there and check?
And then they've asked him to go down to where Amy was and to have a look to make sure it wasn't some sort of a prank call.
He enters the room, picks up the shotgun and clears the weapon, puts the gun down, and then he turns and he sees Amy dead with a horrific shotgun blast to the head.
So now two people have touched that gun, but what was very alarming is the call that Robert made to 000 after he'd seen Amy.
Police emergency, how may I help you?
I've come down the hill to where my son and his partner live, and she's dead.
What does that say? She's dead. Someone shot her. I think it must have been my son. He's not here. My son made the mistake.
That was his immediate reaction. He then spoke with Gareth Price, and what Gareth told him about Amy having shot herself dispelled his immediate concern.
Later on, he asks his son, "Did you do it?" And his son says no, and he believes him.
Three years after Amy died, in 2017, we finally got some encouraging news. The coroner who had the police brief was so concerned about what she had read that she referred the matter to the DPP, and they in turn referred it to the police cold case unit. I thought, well, this is good because, you know, they're going to start from a clean slate.
The WA Police Cold Case Squad, they asked if I would do some reconstructions. We went back to the house in Serpentine.
And they used a police officer who had the same physical features of Amy. And this is a long process of testing against multiple scenarios about how Amy could self-inflict that fatal gunshot injury.
Miss Wensley was seated in an alcove with the feet pushed against the door and her back up against the wall. Her right hand was found underneath her right thigh. This hand had no blood material nor any gunshot residue, which tells to me that it was underneath her buttock at the time of the gun being discharged. The gun was fired from the right side of the body in a horizontal alignment. We were investigating the suggestion that Ms. Wensley shot herself using her left hand across her body and pushed the trigger with her left hand. The model was able to reach the trigger with her left hand, but without the use of her right hand, she had no way of controlling the position of the barrel. We then tested whether Ms. Wensley could have shot herself using her right hand and her left hand holding the barrel against her right temple. In 10 trials, the right hand of the model ended up away from her body and certainly not tucked under her thigh. There were two important issues we were able to show. The first was that if we take as evidence that the gun was fired from the right side of the body in a horizontal alignment, the gun, of course, would have recoiled away from her body after the shot. Then the shotgun could not have been found by Mr. Price in front of the deceased, with the butt on the floor near her feet and the barrel up near her head. The question is, how did it end up in front of her? If Mr. Price is telling the truth in his evidence, someone else must have put it there. My conclusions back to the cold case squad was it was more likely, it was highly consistent with her having been shot by another person.
I thought that Professor Ackland's report was strong. Now, I accept that there are limitations to Professor Ackland's report. There was no detailed forensic model of the scene from the night. And secondly, no one can ever truly reconstruct the movement of a body after it's been hit with a shotgun shell. But on the balance of probabilities, I think his report is reliable and does indicate that it is unlikely that Amy shot herself.
We were desperate to find out what was on Amy's phone, if there was any evidence at all about what had happened the night that she died. When Cold Case became involved, they asked for the phone. Well, technology has advanced and they were able to get into Amy's phone. One of the things that they retrieved from Amy's phone was a selfie that she took. With her left hand, she's holding her mobile phone to take a photo of her reflection in the mirror. And in her right hand, she's holding a double-barrel shotgun. The photo was taken at 4:48 on the night that Amy died. Amy then spoke to her mother at approximately 5 p.m. and told her mother she's arguing with David Simmons, that she was leaving. And then from that point, 18 minutes later, she's dead. She's actually holding the gun that ended her life, and she's holding it in her right hand. Sorry.
There can be multiple interpretations for that image and the intent behind that image.
The feeling I got was that the police were concerned that perhaps this photo indicates that Amy harmed herself. I look at that photo and I see someone who wants to defend themselves.
I've always been troubled by that photo. Why did she take that photo? I honestly don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anyone will ever know. Looks like she took it for a reason.
Three years to the day that Amy had passed away, we thought we'd go to one of Amy's favourite places that she loved to go with her children.
We make sure that every year on Amy's birthday we celebrate and remember those special memories that the girls had with their mother.
Do you know how old your mum's going to be?
27.
How did you know that?
I just count, like, every year.
When the girls were younger, I recorded them talking a little bit about their mum before their memory fades.
We all let go of balloons and we said happy birthday, Mum. Yeah. I didn't want to let go of my balloon. I wanted to keep it.
Why?
Because I really liked it. I wanted to keep it for Mum.
Amy's children are getting older and so much of them reminds me of their mother.
Cold cases are very difficult to solve. You don't have the original crime scene.
All the time, both Anna and I were working and thinking about what other expertise was critical for the coroner to have.
And I came across a TV series called Ron Iddle's The Good Cop.
That the answer is in the original file.
He was narrating his own stories about his own experience as a detective. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, oh my God, listen to this guy. I said, this is who I need.
That's when I had to use my ABC of homicide. Assume nothing, believe nothing, and check everything.
I had 42 years in Victoria Police. 25 years of that was at the homicide squad. I've been involved in over probably 250 suicides. I've always worked on the view that to prove a suicide, you should start with the basis that it's a homicide. And you work backwards, right? On reading the inquest brief, I think this is very strange. If a shotgun was used in these circumstances, I would have expected her to be on the bed or sitting on the end of the bed. Here is a lady that's been involved in some sort of altercation and argument with her partner. Amy is in the bedroom in a corner, sort of huddled up. If you accept that the right hand is underneath her right thigh, then she only has one hand in which she can hold the gun. The likelihood of Amy doing it to herself, I think, is highly unlikely. I can't explain why they came to that assessment other than lazy police work.
Before the inquest was due to commence, I received a letter from the Corruption and Crime Commission, and their conclusion was that they suspected serious misconduct and that they would now refer the matter to the WA Police Internal Affairs to investigate further.
The Internal Affairs report is quite comprehensive. It identifies many failings of the investigation on the night.
And I thought, wow, this is excellent. And I read on to see what happened, and they received a Deputy Commissioner's warning notice, which didn't really make me feel fantastic.
The shooting death of a young mother in Serpentine 6 years ago is being investigated by the coroner. Amy Lee Wensley's death was originally ruled suicide, but the court was told she could have been murdered.
It's finally happening. After more than 6.5 years, we're going to a coroner's inquest into the death of Amy. And I hope the outcome of the inquest is that Amy did not take her own life. Amy's favourite flowers are frangipanis. So this morning before we left home, I actually went into the garden and picked some fresh frangipanis. We'll be wearing these today, so just for her, so that people will know that we're here for Amy as a group, as a team.
Families shouldn't have to push so hard to get some resolution. The family deserve better. They're the ones that have driven it, not the police.
Take your time. Don't answer the question straight away. Just think about what's been asked. Just take your time. And if you need a break, just say it.
I'm just very anxious, nervous. Deep breaths.
The cold case review, which is the last complete police investigation before the inquest, did as best it could given the earlier failings. It had left open 3 possibilities. 1, that Amy killed herself. 2, that somebody had killed her. 3, that there was an accidental discharge of the firearm whilst she and somebody else were holding it. The coroner heard evidence from a lot of Amy's family and long-term friends that there had been incidents of violence. There had been incidents of coercive control. Larry Blanford gave evidence that nobody had ever taken a statement from him in the major crime investigation or the cold case investigation. I think Larry Blanford's concerns about the conduct of the detectives on the night was justified. It was supported by the other 2 uniforms who were there on the night.
Detective Tony Kirkman admitted he made the wrong decision at the time and apologised to the family. His colleague, Detective Tom Weidman, said he too regretted not calling in the experts, but backed up the conclusion that it was suicide.
Detective Kirkman, he said his arrogance got in the way on the night. But one of the things that he said that really stuck out for me was that he was going on 7 weeks leave, and on the night Amy died, that was his last shift. It raised a lot of questions for me. We also heard from Tim Ackland, who believed that it was more likely that someone else had shot Amy.
Professor Ackland told the court the location of the injury and the recoil of the shotgun meant the weapon would not have landed on her.
So we're on day 5 now. Sorry, I'm just a bit tired. I just find this really draining. Because of the failures on the night of not preserving the scene and collecting forensic evidence, it's just easier to say she did it rather than go and seek the truth, however that may look.
The police, organisationally, seemed to be not just presenting the facts. They were positively trying to argue a case, firstly, that Amy committed suicide. So no matter what the failings were on the night, it didn't actually cause any harm. And secondly, that there was no need for the coroner to be in any way critical of the police's conduct, because whatever happened on the night wouldn't happen now because of changes in the police organisational structure.
Today's the last day of the inquest, so finally we get the chance to see what David Simmons has to say.
David Simmons is potentially the most critical witness in this. His evidence, like Gareth's evidence, was consistent with his story all along, that he and Gareth were outside at the time of the noise that ultimately appears to have been Amy being shot. I put to him the alternative scenario that he had gone back into the house and that he had reacted angrily to being pushed out of the bedroom, to having the door shut in his face, and he denied that.
She was hiding behind the door and you held the gun against her head. Did that happen?
No.
And the gun went off and you just dropped the gun in her lap. Did that happen?
No.
I put it to him that he had been holding the gun at the time Amy was shot. He denied having any involvement with her death.
I'm not lying and I'm not holding anything back. I know I've lost the best person in my whole life, and now I have to live with that and listen to people like you and whoever is trying to blame me for it because they can't have closure themselves.
The the end of the inquest, we submitted that the coroner could exclude suicide as a cause of death. Anna has been the glue that's held the family together through all of this.
Welcome home.
She has a very strong sense of injustice, and she's very, very supportive of Nancy.
Give your puppies a cuddle.
I could not have done it, and I'm just so thankful and grateful that I got a sister like that.
So the family waited 8 months to finally hear what the coroner would find.
Hello?
Hey. Just received a letter.
A letter from who?
Coroner.
Nancy, what's it say? The coroner handed down her finding, which was an open finding. Oh, Nance.
The coroner couldn't be satisfied whether Amy died at her own hand or that of another, or by accident, because of the lack of evidence as a consequence of the initial failings in the investigation. But the coroner didn't accept the police's case that it was suicide.
I wish I was there with you. It was devastating. We were in tears. So that means that this just becomes an unsolved case.
I think that they were hoping that there would be a finding and a reference back to the DPP, but the coroner wouldn't go quite so far as to say that Professor Ackland's evidence was conclusive on the balance of probabilities that somebody else shot Amy. In respect of the photo, the coroner said that it is not unusual for somebody who's going to commit suicide for them to take a photo of themselves with the weapon. Whether that's the case here or not, we just will never know. In respect of Robert Simmons, David's father, she said that she found him to be an honest and forthright witness, and in respect of David Simmons, she said that there was nothing in his demeanour to indicate that he was lying about how Amy died. Similarly with Gareth Price and his evidence. I feel sorry for the family for the fact that they will never know. But equally, the police failings affect David. The failure to properly investigate this has left a cloud that David can't avoid. It's not just about Amy, it's about everyone who's affected by the failure to investigate.
You're inseparable sometimes.
And who does that remind you of?
Me and Amy.
But it's nice that they're growing up together because it's what Amy would have wanted anyway.
Yeah.
She'd be proud, I reckon.
So proud.
I just truly believe that when police are called out to an incident that involves partners in a relationship, they have to look at it through a domestic violence lens. It is so out of control in this country. It's hard sometimes, isn't it?
It's so hard.
You just miss her. I know. We know. Things have to change, and one of those changes can be the attitude of how police look at this when they first walk in that room. I can't do anything else for Amy except this. This is the last thing I'll ever do for her. Apart from watching over her children, apart from helping them. Tell me what you remember about Mum.
That we had fun together. She used to bake pancakes and cakes when it was our birthday.
What colour were her eyes?
Brown.
I've been told by the police that this is now a cold case and they don't intend to do anything unless new evidence comes to light. I just thank God that there is interest coming now, even after the inquest, from people of legal and political backgrounds, which is encouraging for us in the hope that somehow someone is able to help resolve this matter. So how can I, as her aunt, not continue this? What do you miss most about Mum that you couldn't miss her?
My mummy more than anything. So. Ball up in the tree, said Tom.
Great reading. What's your Barbie's name?
Like a fairy.
Fairy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mariposa.
Oh, Fairy Mariposa?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. See how far she can fly.
Yeah.